What's this one? That's logged into the Facebook.
There.
Okay,
Yeah, we're
let's
live
just
on
roll.
Instagram, so it's coming to take turn my elastic away.
Alright. We'll go 20 more seconds and then we'll fire it up.
Dun, dun, dun.
You want a parody?
Oh, thank you.
You good?
Yeah.
Your coffee. Alright.
I was enjoying
Oh,
So that was planned.
oh. Alright.
Oh, this is brilliant. Oh my gosh.
I'd like to make it easy going.
Yeah. So just come sit in the wet chair now, Kevin.
Oh. There we go.
So that no one can see the floor.
Alright. Okay, you guys ready?
We're ready. Waiting on you.
Fire it up. That was stupid. Alright.
Hi everyone, it's Fran and Kevin with Ajuga, and today we are here with Marie Cummins. I'm saying that correctly? Yeah, and she's going to share her incredible story with us here today, so we're really excited, and it's really nice to meet you. Thank you for coming with us here today.
Yeah, hi Marie. Hi everyone. Alright, so let's get into this. Marie has done some really great training she's going to tell us about over the past year. She's taken lots of courses to become someone special, someone that's here to help others, and she's going to tell you about that. Let's get into it.
Okay.
All right.
Hi everyone, thanks for joining us. And my name's Marie, and I am a survivor of domestic violence. And over the past year, I've done several courses that's actually going to allow me to work with people who are currently in or have been subjected to domestic violence. Now, my own experience, I didn't actually know what was going on. There was so many dynamics to the domestic violence I was actually experiencing. And for a lot of the time, I actually internalized it. There was the constant emotional abuse, so that's the gaslighting. And what that was actually doing to me was, it was allowing me to internalize the abuse I was receiving, for me to look within, and constantly being, blamed. There was snide remarks. If I behaved this way, didn't do that, didn't say that, then the abuse wouldn't happen. So as a result of that, I lost every bit of self-esteem I'd ever had. Now, trying to explain that to an outsider looking in, it's just about impossible, because there was so much going on in my own life. I was putting on a brave face to the outside world. I was laughing, I was smiling, but inside I just felt almost like an outsider looking in. And I couldn't verbalise it to anybody, just what actually was happening, because it's almost like surreal. So the abnormal had started to become normal in my life. Now, as a result of that, you're constantly told if you ever tell anybody, nobody will ever believe you. Everybody thinks that you're a failure. Everybody knows that you're a liar. Everybody knows that you're this, that, and the other. Every negative.
This is what he's telling you.
Yeah.
Right? The abuser is telling you.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
So you're then told that nobody will ever love you the way that I do. So it's kind of like this positive and negative. It's like the blowing hot and cold. And as a result of that, you actually start to feel as though you're the problem. If you only behaved a little bit better, then the abuse won't be happening.
Yeah.
And as I'm saying it now, I'm kind of like looking back, and it is like another lifetime away. Now that I've done my own healing, and now that I've actually done like the external courses to allow me to realise just how the brain works when somebody is being subjected to the constant abuse. But also, an abuser is not abusive 100% of the time, and that's the confusing part. So if you do something that makes them happy or pleases them, then you get all the praise, and you think, okay, so it was me. I wasn't working hard enough. I wasn't, doing what I should be doing. Now that I'm doing it, it's going to stop. So it reels you into kind of like a false sense of security. But then there's something else comes in, and something else. So you're literally running your life around somebody else's demands, and it leaves you exhausted. I was unable to sleep, unable to eat. I was starting to lose friends. I was starting to push back with, various family members, because I thought, if the abuser is telling me all this about myself, what are other people saying?
Mm-hmm.
And he had me convinced that other people were actually talking to him about me.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a very confusing place to be. In those times I thought, I'm actually going mad. I'm actually going crazy. And there's something wrong with me. Should I go to the doctors? Well, what am I going to say to the doctor? Should I go and see a mental health professional? But what do I say? Because I couldn't verbalise the madness that was going on.
Mm-hmm.
And that went on for during the relationship, and then the relationship ended, and I thought, that's it, I'm free.
Mm-hmm.
But nobody tells you about domestic violence, the post-separation abuse, which is after the time you actually depart the relationship, or the abuser departs the relationship, what they will do to actually continue to maintain power and control over you. So that was one of the biggest learning curves for me, is domestic violence is all about power and control. So you have the perpetrator and you have their target, and what they want to do is literally engulf that person's life and take over everything, every thought, every breath they take, every move they make. So once that relationship ended, I very naively thought, that's it, that's done, I can just move on with my life. But the perpetrator will not let go that easily. And something else that, through my research, certainly over the last year, I found that leaving is actually the hardest time of any domestic violence relationship, and somebody's chances of losing their life to the perpetrator increases approximately 7 times.
Wow.
In the first couple of weeks of actually leaving. So what the perpetrator's doing is they want to do anything they can to maintain power and control over that person.
Yeah.
And if that means that nobody else can have them, they will go to the extremes.
They think they're losing them, and they need that control.
That's it.
So they need to stay in contact and keep pushing, but probably even worse than before, maybe even.
Absolutely. Yeah, the domestic violence does ramp up massively after the separation. And it's very difficult to try and get into the mind of a perpetrator. Very disturbing place to be in. Not many people can do it.
Right.
But certainly from the research and from like the seminars and the instructors I've had, they've worked so hard to get somebody exactly where they need them to benefit their life. They're not going to let go easy.
Yeah.
So they're going to cling on to them. Even if they don't want them, even if they've moved on to another relationship, they don't want their target actually living a normal life. They want them in the background just in case their life doesn't work out, so they can go back and pick them up. Okay. Now, one of the other dynamics to domestic violence is what we call the smear campaign. So the smear campaign is the perpetrator will do things. So it could be that they're hiding the television remote, and then they help their target look for it, and they'll say, did you check on the kitchen counter? And they're like, yeah, I've checked, it wasn't there. And then they go in, they put the remote on there and say, there it is.
Oh.
Wow.
Now you think, okay, so the first time it happens, you're like, okay, I must have missed it, we've all done that. But then it becomes more and more frequent and more sinister. So what the perpetrator is trying to do is get their victim to actually believe that they are psychologically ill, they are mentally ill, they are forgetting things, they are forgetting where they put the car keys, and the perpetrator will have them in the pocket the whole time, but help them look for it. Then what the perpetrator will do is to contact the friends, the family members, acquaintances, even work colleagues to say, I'm really worried about them because they keep on losing things. It was like the remote control the other night, it was the car keys, and then they get angry at me and I don't really know what to do. So what they're actually doing is starting what we call that smear campaign, okay, to make it look as though their target is not coping with everyday life.
against them as well.
That's basically what they do, and they're often people who engage in the smear campaign are quite often known as what we call the flying monkeys, a term come from the Wizard of Oz. Okay.
Yeah.
So then the target's family are starting to get concerned, and they're starting to notice, that they're not sleeping, they're not eating, they may be drinking more than usual, and they get very agitated, they get very defensive. So somebody could say, they could like spill a drink, for example, and before you know it, it's like everything's just blown up, because in their mind, that's like the end of the world, whereas coming out of it and you're looking, it's like, it's a coffee, it's spilled on the floor, we clean it up.
Yeah.
But because they've been programmed to believe that they are useless, that there's something wrong with them, the slightest mistake is going to have them overreacting. And at this point, they're living in what we call the parasympathetic nervous system, which is basically the fight or flight. So then family members will say, well, it's not like them, and they've lost a lot of weight, and yeah, there's something wrong with them. So then the perpetrators reel somebody in, and they're like, brilliant, I've got somebody else on side. Now, a perpetrator will push a target to their limits, and eventually the target will react, and it's what we call reactive abuse. And it's not uncommon for a perpetrator to push and push and push to get the reaction that they need, and then to actually film them. Okay?
Film them?
Film them.
Ah.
So then they've got the evidence, they've got the proof that as a perpetrator they are actually being abused. They're being called terrible names. They are the ones that are suffering because this person here is exceptionally toxic and abusive because of whatever mental illness they've actually diagnosed them with. Then they'll show that to people, and then people are like, oh, maybe there's a lot more going on, and I didn't realise they were as abusive as that, and the poor perpetrator. So now this army is gathering around him, and the target is literally on their own.
Wow.
It's very complicated dynamics, and it gets very deep. So eventually when the relationship ends, the target has nobody. Absolutely nobody. Now, because the abuse ramps up at this stage, stalking, harassment, trackers on cars, a perpetrator will go to any lengths, and then the target will say, they will think that they're actually going crazy. They'll think that there's something wrong with them. The perpetrator will just, send them a message, and they'll just say, I've just seen you at the grocery store, and the target's like, how did they know that? Well, because there's a tracker on the car. So, if the target was to mention that to anybody, they'd say they're absolutely going insane, they're crazy. I don't want anything else to do with them. Everything the perpetrator's told me about them is true, and this is how they're reacting. So the perpetrator has already built their defence before the relationship's ended.
Wow.
Then we've got the financial abuse as well. Now, financial abuse occurs in 98 to 99% of every single domestic violence relationship. 98 to 99% will experience financial abuse. So that could be that they're running a joint bank account and run up huge debts, at which point the target is that terrified they don't mention it to anybody, and they are now left to pay off the overdraft. It could be that they've actually taken the target's car. It could be that they've actually lost the job as a result of the domestic violence, for constantly, coming into work late because the perpetrator, prevented them from going to work. It could be that they're constantly phoning the person at work, whether eventually I just need to leave. Maybe that will make the perpetrator, lay off me a little bit. They're doing everything they can to protect themselves. Now, the financial abuse, particularly when there's children involved, can go on for years. And it's not uncommon for a perpetrator to constantly take the target back to court. Okay, particularly when there's children involved. And as a result of that, the target is still stuck in the perpetrator's abuse. It's also costing them thousands, tens of thousands of pounds to protect themselves. But also there's the emotional aspect as well. So it's not simply writing a check are giving it to a lawyer, it's the emotional abuse that's going on with them, okay? So they're going to keep them hooked for as long as possible. And as a result of that, so you get somebody who's going through this situation for years, they are literally going to feel as though they're on their own. Now, for many, many years, there's been a huge stigma attached to domestic violence. So, historically, domestic violence, if you took it back to your family, we don't want to know, sort it out. Don't tell anybody, because what will the neighbours think?
Right.
They'll think it's our fault, so you don't tell anybody.
Yep.
Deal with it. You married him, you married him, you decided to have children with her, it's your bed, you go and lay in it, work it out. Okay?
Yep.
So as a result of that, the target's constantly working harder and harder to improve things, and the perpetrator's just taken and taken and taken and taken. And for many years there was a huge stigma attached to single parents. And you know, you don't want your children growing up without two parents, this is what will happen. So people felt for years, centuries, decades, centuries, that they had to stay with this. They had no option.
Yep. The financial aspect. Am I going to live in the car with my child? Am I going to live in the car by myself because I have no money?
Will I even have a car?
That's it.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Particularly if they've been like a stay-at-home parent and the incomes come from the perpetrator, who's controlled the bills, given them an allowance. They will just strip them from everything, and they'll just say, you can't cope without me, you're going to have nowhere to live. It's not uncommon for a perpetrator to actually relocate. It could be across the country, it could be across the world, just to keep the target isolated. Then it's more difficult for them to leave.
No family around, no.
And if there is
friends.
no family, no friends. They're with the children 24/7. They're not allowed to work. And it's a very isolating situation. That's all they've got, that's all they know. And the whole time this is going on, the target's constantly trying to improve themselves. They're constantly, you know, if I'd done this, it wouldn't be as bad. If I'd done that, at least they don't hit me. At least they don't hit me, because that is domestic violence. Okay, when they hit me, that's it, I'm gone out the door. And for many, many years, that's what we thought domestic violence was. But domestic violence is not just the physical attack. It could be blocking somebody from going out. It could be throwing things to terrorise the person. It could be punching walls around the person without actually laying a finger on them. This is all physical abuse. It's psychological abuse. It's emotional abuse. And it's going to leave the target terrified. Okay? Part of them knows what the perpetrator is capable of. The other part doesn't. So then you've got two extremes, like, I don't know what to do. When that car door slams on a night and they're coming from work, I don't know what mood they're going to be in. I'm looking around to make sure everything's clean, the groceries are away, the kids are in bed, they're asleep. Okay, just to wait for the next attack. Okay? Sleep deprivation. You know, very, very common. In sleep deprivation, what they will do is, late at night, they will actually they'll start an argument to keep the target awake all night. And as a result of that sleep deprivation, there's so many, you know, digestive systems going to not be working effectively, the mind. Okay, so the big thing is people cannot think logically on sleep deprivation. And they'll keep going and keep going and keep going. And eventually with sleep deprivation, somebody will become docile and agreeable. So they're constantly trying to get the target to actually admit to something that wasn't true. Eventually with that sleep deprivation, they will admit to things that never happened because the mind, they can't think logically. And if you think about sleep deprivation, how brutal it is, it's actually in the Geneva Convention, it's a war crime.
Really?
That's how serious sleep deprivation is, yet this happens so much in domestic violence. Okay?
Wow.
So at the moment, you know, certainly moving forward, if anybody is experiencing it, there's help out there. I can't stress that enough. For many years, I believe that if I mentioned it to somebody, somebody will think it's my fault.
Yeah.
What will people think? I've got a job I need to keep, and I've got friends, and I don't want anybody thinking, what's wrong with me?
And you were trained to think like that by the perpetrator, really.
100%.
And you just couldn't shake it, probably. Even though you were getting better, you were healing somewhat, you couldn't come to the agreement that it wasn't you, that it had nothing to do with you, really, other than you were the victim.
That's it.
Okay.
Yeah. And responsible for their actions, for their upset. And if they'd done anything that I kind of like called out, they were then upset. They'd run back to the flying monkeys, as we call them, like the people that have having the smear campaign and say, she's kicked off again, she's saying I'm this, I'm that, and the other. Who are me, woe is me.
Yeah.
So it wasn't anything that he'd done to me, it was all how I reacted to it, which as a result left me feeling kind of, am I the abusive one? Is it me? Maybe I shouldn't have said anything, or just pretended I didn't see that.
Yeah.
So coming out of it, which very fortunate today that I am free of that, it took a lot of healing. There was a lot I didn't even know who I was. It was like I didn't know what I liked, what I didn't like. I just been groomed to accept the behaviour. So coming out of it, it was pretty much a blur. For quite a long time, it was pretty much a blur. Constantly on edge, looking over my shoulder because I had been stalked.
Wow.
Very little trust in anybody. And I was very fortunate that, the internet was up and running at that point, and I was like doing my Google searches like, am I going crazy? And I started to do some research on narcissistic abuse. Now, I can't diagnose anybody as being narcissistic, but what I was starting to recognise that I was actually, the behavioural experience was very similar to that of a narcissistic personality disorder.
Yeah.
And there's various types, and I know that the word's thrown around very freely now. The more research I'd done, the more I was ticking boxes, and it was like somebody had written my life story. And I was just like, is this person being sat on my shoulder and like actually written what's going on here? Because the phrases, get over it, you're imagining things, nobody will ever believe you. These were other people were saying that they had experienced. So I started to go through the steps that I needed to actually recover from that. I joined, I'm going to give a shout out to Caroline Strawson, an amazing instructor who actually developed the Narcissistic Abuse Specialist course through the Post-Traumatic Growth Society, and enrolled on a course. We started January last year, 2022 now. And she's been with us for a year, been with a fantastic group of people, and learned so much. It's allowed for my healing, but also given me the tools where I'll be able to assist somebody else
Good.
That's great.
through the domestic, through it, when they come out of it, just to let them know, do you know what, you're not on your own, okay? People do believe you. It was as bad as what you thought. I don't care if other people have it worse or not, it's all about you at this moment in time, and letting you know that you can heal. There's a way forward. And you are not what your abuser has told you you are.
That's huge.
Which is massive.
Yeah.
So there's still, a lot. I mean, I've touched on various things there to give people like an overview of like the different aspects of domestic violence that for many years we just brush under the carpet, don't talk about it, close the curtains, the neighbours won't see it, everything's great. 1 in 3 people will experience domestic violence in their lifetime.
Right.
1 in 3 people.
Wow.
That's just what we know of.
That's a huge statistic there, right?
1 in 3.
That's crazy.
And I always think that's just the people that have actually stepped forward and felt brave enough to say, I'm in that 1 in 3. And also the people that actually know that what they're experiencing is domestic violence, because it's hidden. Certainly a long way to go. There's very little we can do unless somebody steps forward. We can suspect things and think this isn't normal. But until the person steps forward and asks for help, that there's nothing anybody can do with that. But there's, there is organisations out there, there's help available. Where
and you're doing help too right now, right? You're helping people one-on-one type of thing, or what exactly have you done with your going forward? What's your, because you just graduated, I think it was the 13th of December.
Yeah.
13th
of December.
Anybody wants to reach out, definitely reach out to Marie direct. And
absolutely, and I've got a private Facebook group as well, and everybody is vetted, and I keep an eye on that as well. Because I do know how delicate it is, the subject. So everyone is going to be completely, safe in that group. And certainly, reach out. I'm on Facebook. I've just got my own, Facebook. I can get you in the group if you'd like to do that, and kind of like have a look through the posts I've done and things like that. And if this resonates with you, then you're definitely in the right place. But just to know that you're not on your own, there is help available. And there's only you can actually verbalise it.
That's right.
What is going on. And one of the things I hear when I speak to people who have been on the receiving end of this, one of the first things they'll say to me is, "You're not going to believe me," and I know straight away I'm going to believe every word you say because I've been there.
That's right.
I've been there where it's just like, this is not real. It's like watching a Hollywood horror movie. So there is help, and it's insidious. Unfortunately, there's no signs of it eradicating anytime soon. But it's just to let people know that the stigma. There's still a stigma attached to it, but it's not as bad as what it used to be. You're not a failure, you're not on your own. There's people there who are happy to help you.
Probably looked at as more courageous if you do come forward and talk, because it's extremely courageous to be able to step up and talk about what's happened to you or what you're going through at the moment. So in a Ajuga tribe, I know there's a few people that have reached out to Fran and I that have experienced it. You guys haven't got a chance to, you haven't shared your story as of yet, but we want you to. So definitely we hope that Marie being here today talking about domestic violence gives you maybe the little nudge to speak up and get yourself healed. It's all about healing, moving forward, and so happy to have people like Marie out there, and everybody that the people that taught you and that you're working with, and as a group together we can make that little difference that is needed, right, to paradigm shift everything.
That's right.
So
so anyway, thank you all for joining us here today, and Happy New Year to everyone.
Happy
we didn't
New Year.
say that at the beginning. So thank you all for joining us, and like Kevin and Maria also said, if you need to reach out, please do. If you want to reach out to us, we can put you in contact with her, whatever is your safer, whatever you feel safe doing, that we can do that for you. So thank you all for joining us, and I guess that's it for today.
Thank you, Marie.
And thank you.
Thank you,
All right. Now I gotta figure out how to save this.
So just hit X.
X? Alright. There's a lot of people on there,
Yeah,
right?
I know. I'll see it when you hit there. Okay, you can turn off
You sure
yours
you
now.
want to?
Now this is where we all get like, oh my god, I'm gonna like screw. Oh my god, there's water everywhere. Oh, that's just videoing us. That's just that's our extra copy.
We have to do an extra copy because
I don't know how long I talked for there. I'm sorry.
Oh no, it'll be on there. It'll tell us in a second. I can look.